issues. We work with a lot of different cork producers, and essentially we've just found that regardless of what level, how much we actually pay for cork, there is still a very high percentage of cork taint, of TCA within the corks that we've used. And also we get a lot of feedback from customers who, if they've found TCA or have found that there's been any leakage in the cork, then they will actually charge us back for cork that's been, for wines that have been returned to the shop. So actually, when we show these essentially bills that we receive from clients to our cork producer, they are reluctant, of course, to reach into their pockets to allow us to recoup that cost. So at the entry level, we have absolutely no qualms of putting not only the whites but the reds into screw cap as well.
Indeed. So the science behind it, in essence, is that cork, being bark, part of the tree, has an infection, or can have infections in part of the bark. Infections called TCA, tricyclic, something or other, don't quote me. But basically, no matter what the cork manufacturers do, they cannot get rid of this particular infection in the wood. And what happens is when wine gets exposed to a TCA infested cork, you basically have this term that we use in colloquialism of cork taint, or being corky. And basically what it will do is mask fruit. You get a mustiness, sometimes even some people say it correlated to garlic in really extreme cases. A lot of people can't pick it up, they just know they don't like the wine, and that's a problem for a producer as well, because they don't recognize it, they go, I just don't like that wine. And certainly as a frustration for producers is that this isn't what we make, this is what we make, and we buy this from a third party. And it's actually a third party's product that actually goes on to ruin our wine. So certainly the wonderful thing about screw cap is you immediately remove all of those issues associated with TCA. More importantly, there's an argument that says that cork breathes and screw cap doesn't breathe. And people use that as a negative towards screw cap, when actually it's a positive. Because if you're actually looking to protect wine in its truest form, screw cap's the best situation you can possibly be at. It's what they call anaerobic. It is completely null of all contact with oxygen, whereas cork will obviously breathe. Now, some people argue for a red wine where you want it to age with time, then that natural oxygen exchange is quite a good thing. But the argument is, if you actually want to store your wines seriously long periods of time, the best way to actually store them is in an oxygen-free environment. Now, the downside of screw cap, and I know this now, I think, very long-winded for YouTube, is because it doesn't breathe. You can get what they call reduction. Wine becomes reductive if it is not exposed to oxygen, and you get a slightly unpleasant smell when you first open a screw cap. Certainly, the early days of the New Zealanders using screw cap, they found that there was bottles that were quite smelly at first, that then would become, you would lose this reduction with time in the glass. But again, with technology, you can actually remove what they call the reductive components in wine prior to bottling. So we would actually, our setup for bottling would be far different when we're going to put a wine onto screw cap than when we're going to put it onto cork. And one of the processes you go through is actually removing reductive components so that it can't get reductive in the bottle.